Hello, my name is Susana Rodriguez. I'm a psychologist at INSER. Welcome to this space called Voices of Hope, Infertility as a Path of Learning. This space is created to raise awareness, inform, and support each other in the quest of getting pregnant. For this, we have experts in the area of fertility. Today, we have the honor of having Estela Chardon in this space. Estela will talk from her experience and knowledge related to the process of couples in fertility. Estela is a psychologist from the University of Buenos Aires, perinatal psychologist. She is a member of the team of the Reproduction team of Samer, author of a book called Mamá por Donación, and she's here today, and it's an honor for us and for you as well. Welcome, Estela. How are you? Hello. I'm very grateful for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. These are the wonderful things that the virtuality offers us. I am from Argentina, we're far, and yet we are able to communicate. If there's something that I have learned, maybe you didn't mention it. 25 years ago, I founded a civil foundation with Isabel Rolando of patients. Besides being a psychologist, I am a mom by donation of eggs, and we created this foundation of patients. So many years ago, we have been working on this topic, trying to get close, to share, and to share with the people that have experienced this path. Don't feel alone, that we are many, and it's hard, but in the end, the illusion comes and we're able to become a family. Estela, yeah, you're right. You are a co-founder of Concebir. And for me, it's important because it's important for people to find other people in the same path. I have experience in these areas of perinatal psychologist, the prenatal, the postpartum period. And besides, I have a personal experience. I have gone through the whole process. I know what it feels like to being injected and to go through all the steps of the process. Wonderful. We are so happy to have you here. Estela, I'm gonna let you now share your experience and knowledge, and so you can share all the path of infertility. I'll see you soon. We're gonna start with the title, Assisted Reproduction and its Emotional Challenges. It's one of the things that we learn, the people that go through this experience, the professionals of the medical team that accompany the people that go through this process of assisted reproduction that implies sustaining challenges. We're going to try to see some of them, or at least understand what happens. Sometimes, that's why the drawing, this woman with the representation of the baby in her mind, of the mom or the dad, that someday a child was going to come. Sometimes that doesn't happen. People sometimes don't imagine that they're going to have a baby. And at some point, something happens and they have this desire to have a family. Of course, talking about diversity, there are many ways in which moms are in this process. Single mothers or other ways. But they know that they're going to have to go through an assisted method, like a donation, so they're going to have to reach to a third person. But in the case of heterosexual couples, it seems like it's very easy, like a straight path. It's simple. There are no obstacles. We're gonna decide to start the quest for the pregnancy, and the only thing we have to do is go forward. Eventually, difficulties start to come up, and then our perspective changes, and the path that looked so straight begins to transform into a very curvy path that is sometimes very curvy or very straight, but it's no longer as simple as we thought. No matter in which family structure we are, sometimes a mom thinks that all she needs is a sperm donor, or families that think that they only need a donor. And we believe that it was going to be as easy as the story goes. But maybe there are moments in which sadness is prevalent, and we think that the stork is lost in the path that it went away. And we are left dreaming as we were children. And maybe we dream about other alternatives. Or maybe we don't see them. But definitely, we need to know is that something went wrong. Something didn't go as we planned. And that hurts. It hurts a lot. It's a pain that is difficult to share together with the couple and with the family, with friends. And we feel this pain with silence and sad looks and not knowing what might be going on with the other. Of course, every person is going to face the challenge of the process of infertility according to their own individual beliefs. We're not all the same. There are some people more sensitive, or more people that are more towards the blaming side, or maybe other people that bring it outside and point the finger outside. And that's what makes the experience unique. We share what we feel, but the experience is unique. These are goddesses from prehistory. We can be heterosexual couples, but as women, we carry more weight, not only because we are carrying the baby, not only because we have to bear the weight of hormones, but we have the responsibility. And these goddesses represent that this topic transcends humanity. So there is a tension, being a mom or being a woman. And this topic has been discussed throughout many years. and we can be a woman and have a different path, but the idea of being a mother also starts to carry weight. When we talk about infertility and emotions, and we tend to talk about the roller coaster of emotions, and I compare it with the curve of our hormones, that when we are going through the process, these become heightened. And if we see the shape that they have, they look similar. Sometimes we are very happy, very enthusiastic, we have a lot of energy, and sometimes where everything seems to crumble down. And why does it happen? Because not always things go well. Reproduction techniques, the low complexity techniques, there are ratings of 20%, high complexity 30-35% success rate, donation eggs, it reaches 50%. Nonetheless, that's the best case scenario. What happens in couples? I try to find this photo. It's a joint search. However, as I has explained, as women we carry more weight, but it's a shared desire. And this desire sometimes is opposite to the sexual desire. And sexuality becomes a task, something we have to do, mandatory, to reach the objective. These are two desires that at some point were aligned, but sometimes they go different ways. What happens in an heterosexual couple when pregnancy doesn't occur spontaneously? I put it in a stair. There is a desire, there is the search, failure, consultation, and then the assisted techniques. And it becomes like a circuit. When we talk about diverse families, they know that they require the support of a third party. There is an awareness of this diversity, of what it implies. Sometimes the desire doesn't occur so soon, but they know they will need the technique. They search for it, and sometimes failure appears. And this leads us to this cycle: desire, search, failure, grief, try again. And this can prolong for years and years. There are many losses. The first one is, of course, I like this drawing of the woman crying in this pond of blood that sometimes is a miscarriage, but sometimes a period can be lived in the same way. When we see our families and colleagues getting pregnant, and we have the desire of getting pregnant, and that becomes inaccessible, we leave all the situation as grief, as loss. What is it that we grieve? We grieve the illusion that the path to finding a family was going to be a highway. Then we have to go to a doctor, or the beta negative, and we run a lab test and we find a negative result. There is a loss. And also, when we have tried everything and we have to go into a different method, donation, for example, or adoption. Well, when we talk about eggs or sperm donation, the first thing we need to understand is that this person that is going to be born won't share my DNA. It's something that is lost too. This idea of transcendence that we have located in the genes is lost. There is not a continuity anymore. This illusion implied also of the known, of the possible, of the fact that I might know what might come. I know myself, but my genes carry a lot of information of different generations that come with a donation. This is something abstract and not well defined. I have used the word narcissism. That sometimes can be offensive, but it's the idea that I have lost something that belonged to me, that was mine. And sometimes what happens is that I have selected something from the other person that I wanted in my family, and it's not going to be there anymore. And of course this experience that is more uncertain, but genetics is very hard to understand. We have a lot of information in our genes that we have no idea about. Another topic that can be a burden, especially for women and sometimes for men, it's time. The famous biological clock. This is a chart depicting clearly something that is known, is that from the age of 30 our reproductive capacity begins to decline, and when we are close to 40 years we have a 5% pregnancy rate, which is very low. I mean, we have begun with the illusion of a highway, and then it became a very curvy path. Previously we had a very nice view, but sometimes we feel as if we were in a maze and we don't see an option or alternatives, and we are speechless and we have no clue of what to do. So we start to change, and maybe the path that leads to a family is not a highway. I'm trying to keep the metaphor. This example is easy to use in order to see the process as it transforms. So maybe the path that we need to start is this one in the middle of the forest, with light sometimes and with darkness sometimes, with detours, with unknown paths. And what motivates us and pushes us forward is love and the illusion of a child. When there is a structure of a family that is different and we need a donor, a third party, donor is in brackets because it's being discussed in the world as a economical compensation, but we are thinking about a different word. It's an evolution language. So facing this idea of a donation, it's a new path, it's a new opportunity. But in order to see it as an opportunity, we need to go through a process that is known as genetic grief. And it implies I like this image. I think that images help to organize ideas. So we have this tree with roots, with branches, with fruit and flowers and birds. So maybe thinking about a donation is to think about the roots, and that the tree is much more, and that our children want to fly. So we begin to ask, what is a family? And that we need to understand that not all families are not happy, and that not everything goes well in families. It's not only something that happened to certain families. So a donation, or this topic that our child is not going to share DNA, is an old discussion between biology and culture. What comes and what we learn in many areas, sociology, anthropology, have been discussing it. So we also ask very interesting things like, what is it? What are familiar bonds? Bonds are given? Is it determined by genetics? Or families are built day by day as a wall, brick by brick, a brick of comprehension, a brick of respect, love. These blood bonds are not as they seem. So what happens if my DNA is not there? So we need to choose a different picture. So are we not gonna recognize? Is my child not gonna recognize in me? So it might help to be informed, to read this book, Mother by Donation. I go through different questions. What happened with the people that donate? What are my rights and my duties? What about the law according to each country? Who to talk to? How should I talk to my family? How do I handle the questions around me? What do I do with my emotions? All these things happen, and they're normal. They're part of the process. There are some topics that are very important to highlight. This woman sweeping under the rug, and I think that we should not do this with our emotions. We should not sweep them under the rug. We need to understand them, name them, identify them, think and rebuild. And sometimes things might seem different, and we need to start to see the other options. Some people are prepared for this and that, but for other things not. Some people are not prepared to go through a reproduction technique, and many people abandon the treatment because they might find them very hard to handle. Some other people find the reproduction technique as an opportunity. And some people choose adoption. Those are very personal processes. So we should attend our needs, our feelings, what we think is best for me and my family. So we need to rethink some topics, beliefs, preconcepts that we might have in our mind that might not be useful, because right now things are different. And there are other issues that are important, like how to talk with our daughters and sons regarding where they come from. Is the right to know how they were conceived? And that implies that one has to do a very internal process to choose with joy. And that's how we're going to talk about it with our sons and daughters. I'm going to give you a clue, a very little clue. The earlier and the more informal this conversation goes, teenagers are gonna be able to handle it better and to understand better a topic that might be important for them. As I was saying, this makes us face topics and processes that we were not prepared for, to this very curvy path, and we have to be very cautious about the obstacles in the road. But what's certain, and that is something very important to me, is that it makes us rethink family, genetics, bonds, and some movies that I recommend. They're related to bonds and relationships, culture, traditions, and maybe these things might help us indirectly to move on, to heal our wounds when something goes wrong, to regain the strength, and to motivate us to move forward. Well, thank you very much, Susana. Hi, Estela. Thank you very much. Stella, I didn't catch the name of the movies. If you please can remind us the names, it might be interesting. And you were saying that they were very important, that it was not directly related. Yeah, one is called As Father as Son, a Japanese movie, and the other one is The Other Son, a movie about an Israeli and a Palestinian family. I'm not gonna tell you, I'm not gonna give you spoilers. You can search them. They're not related to the techniques. They relate to other issues, to the bonds and to the way we interact with families, how they're built. And for people who have to go through the process, it might be useful. Well, I wanted to show you that in my office, I also have my path, and I use it as a metaphor with my patients. I went through my own process. You said something very important, and that these experiences are very unique. The analysis is always that everyone has to build their own experience in spite of the complexity of the path, to focus on the light and on the tracks that are more compatible with everyone. Stella, yeah, I was gonna say that when it's a couple, as you said, it varies. Sometimes there's a single mother, but when there is a couple, there are two paths to build. And maybe they're in different moments, in different stages. One person might be prepared to go forward, but the other might need to reflect more about what happened, or process their emotions of failure and loss. I always say, when children come, raising is about that, is to comprehend and to understand what the other person is going through. This path is a metaphor, it's very useful. Estela, there are many questions that I wanted to ask. First, some time ago, I read the definition of infertility as the grief of griefs. You put it as this cycle that repeats, and it goes from illusion to failure to grief. What do you recommend to a person that in that process or failure, in a third, fourth, or fifth time, that the illusion is a little bit broken, there are difficulties with the couple? What could you say to these couples that have gone through the cycle in numerous occasions? Many things. First, as I said, they have to know the options. I see a lot of people and couples that are entangled in this cycle. They repeat the search for many years. I'm not a doctor, but people know when women are less than 35, but after 35, they need to consult after 6 months. A gynecologist that might be the doctor of her whole life might not be the option, so they have to go to a proper professional. That's the first step. Then there are people trapped in this cycle of repeating the same treatment, artificial insemination, for example. But there's also a limit for that, because there are people with 25 years of work that have gone through 20 inseminations, so clearly something was happening. So insisting in repeating a technique, sometimes you have to say this is no longer an option. The same with high complexity procedures. Unfortunately, medicine cannot always open every single door. So sometimes the only solution is trying with donation, this new path, for different reasons, because embryos are not implanting or developing. There are many medical reasons that the specialist can explain. That implied, of course, a psychological process, accepting and recognizing. Medicine can be clear and can give you the options, but every single person has to connect to these feelings, even if they're painful, and being able to decide together, if it's the case with their couple, with their partner, what's the best option. If I see myself in a maze, if I see myself trapped, there are many things that I can do. I can listen to a second opinion. I can take some time off to think. I can share with other people that are going through the same process. That tends to help a lot. Support groups give a lot of strength. Sometimes you don't want to talk to your family because they're gonna try to advise to go for vacation or give you very light advice, and we don't find them useful. And then we have to ask everything. I always say, write everything down. We tend to disregard ideas. Sometimes ideas come and we think that they're not right. But every single idea is okay. They may not have an answer. That's another issue. But every single question is right. And they have a meaning because they popped up because of a reason. There is, of course, the option to contact specialists. I have my therapist, people say, and I've been going for a long time, but reproduction is a very specific field of psychology. And maybe the person that was helping you for a long time might not have the obligation to know how to guide you through the process. So I think it's very important to keep hope. When we start and we see the highway is like a sunrise, it's shiny, there's a lot of joy, then hope, we have to build it. It's how we build bonds and relationships. We have to build them day by day, and in order to build them, we need to give ourselves time to grieve for any loss that we might have experienced, the pregnancy or the process. That requires time, and we tend to rush and we tend to skip steps, but as I had said, when it hurts really bad, and we need to accept that it hurts, give ourselves time, understand ourselves, be compassionate with ourselves, because we don't realize sometimes, and we demand from ourselves not as the goddesses from humanity, but ourselves. Yes, I agree. I love the example of sweeping the dust under the rug instead of pretending to be okay, is to take everything out, dare to ask, to search, not only outside but inside. Allow our partner to ask themselves as well. I agree with you. Also with that, not one psychologist is able to attend these needs of reproduction. We also need to choose the adequate person. Estela, I want to ask you, I think you're an expert. Genetic grief is something that is mentioned when there is donation of eggs or sperm. What can you tell us from your experience? How do we handle this topic with the patients? The genetic grief is that every person has to find the meaning. Each person has an attribution to that grief. I'm going to give you an example that is funny from a person that came to the group many years ago. It was a man that finally reached a donation. In the beginning, it was hard for him. We worked, and one day he came and he was laughing. And I asked him, and he said, I realized that I'm not sure if you call it the same, bow-legged. He was bow-legged, and he said that he always imagined that his child was going to be bow-legged as him. And I never asked myself, what if I had a girl, if she was going to be bow-legged too? It's as if I wanted to prolong myself. And he reached the process alone with his own personal meaning. And he realized that it was okay, that it didn't make sense, and they chose a different path. what was difficult for him didn't have a lot of explanation, but it's what bothered him. There are other people that focus more on a special ability. For example, if I sang very well, I would like my son or daughter to have a very good voice, and we are actually not sure. The biological component is not always present. So a way to go through the grief is to make them realize that, for example, they might not be a singer, but they might share the affinity for singing, and maybe there's joy there more than having a good voice. So to reach this personal meaning is part of the process of the genetic grief. It doesn't go away as easily. It's maybe something that we don't ask ourselves. It might be in our mind somewhere, maybe in the back of our mind, and it never reached the front because we never ask the proper questions. There's another thing that we don't ask ourselves when we share with a couple, is that we're gonna have our genes mixed, and I don't know what's gonna be left from my genes. That's why I display these pictures, and this is how the process go. Genes mix. There are many mothers and many people that talk about epigenetics, and they feel very relieved because of the impact of the context and how it can transform the embryo. And I say that, well, epigenetics is there, and it's a phenomenon. It's one of many processes. For example, folic acid. Most women take folic acid, and it's very important for the neurological development to have our thyroid working and having other hormones like prolactin and estrogens working well. Those things are very important for a healthy pregnancy as well. So sometimes we only focus on epigenetics, and when we talk about genetic grief, it's like we're taking a shortcut. But maybe the most important thing is to think that that baby is gonna grow for 40 weeks inside my uterus, and that mother is gonna provide a lot of things. That baby is gonna grow listening to her or to his or her parents, and they're gonna be loved, and that is more important than a physiological mechanism. So the invitation is, sometimes is very hard, is to accept that if I needed a period of time for my own genetic grief, when I talk with my child, even in an early age, them at some point in their lives might go through a similar process that's related to the desire of understanding, to receive information. And that's healthy, because they're not going to sweep doubts under the rug. And curiosity helps human beings. So people that are born from a donation of egg or sperm, this curiosity is associated, and research states this, it's related to a healthy bond with their parents. We have to encourage curiosity. Children ask all the time. The problem is when adults silence these questions. I agree, Estela. Finally, I wanted to ask a very common question that is asked to us as professionals that support reproductive treatments. Is a father and a mother a couple that receive a donation of gametes? What can you say to these people who are going through this evaluation or this grief, or considering this method of donation? Are they going to be parents of these children? Of course, being a father and a mother is a task that is wonderful, titanic. It's titanic. Unfortunately, we realize about how important it is to raise when you are actually doing it. As a son or as a daughter, you see the mistakes of your parents, but when you try to be a parent, it's harder. This cell is what allowed us to become a family, to have this embryo. But from that cell that someone gave us to the center of the bank, from that cell, we're going to build a family. A family is more than a cell. With this, I'm not disregarding genetics. It's just one more part of it. It's important for people to know this. It's interesting to disclose the donor if that's the case, but it's not something to be afraid of. Families sometimes think that it's going to be a scary process if the child asks to meet his or her parents. There's no issue with this. Being a mother and a father is more than that. We see it every day. We see families with a lot of problems, with violence, fathers that leave and the mother is left with the baby. Being a father is not giving a sperm. Being a father is something else. And being a mother is not only to carry the pregnancy. Sometimes another person can carry the pregnancy, but a mother and a father are the people that are going to receive this being in their family. That's why I say take your time. Don't try to minimize it or simplify it or find quick answers. You are also entitled to have doubts. Build your families. Think, ask yourselves questions, and share it. If you have a partner or if you're a single parent, well, there are support groups and other ways to share and to talk about it. But I think that it's actually better to reflect, to doubt, to ask questions than to have an absolute certainty, because we have no idea how this new person is going to be. And we have to be flexible. We have to give a lot. Children give a lot of joy, but they also demand a lot of effort, and we have to give them the freedom to fly. Wonderful. Estela, thank you very much for your participation. We're gonna provide the link for your book. We have it in Colombia, the new edition. I'm very happy for it. How to find you in social media. A very big hug to you, and thank you very much for this space and for all the people who are interested and connected through infertility. It was a joy and a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much, and very good luck for everyone who's trying to become a family. Big kiss and a big hug. See you soon.